will be brutally honest. Ain't nothing but being brutally honest. Coming at you with another video. Our special guest. This time, you won't see his face. He is like the darkness of the Undertaker as we speak, but Randy is here.
Hey, yes, I am. Hey, all you're missing is gray hair and a gray goatee. That's about it.
That's pretty much it. But anyways, man, it's been a minute, probably like 4 months ago, but it was a great debate. Everybody who didn't see that interview, you definitely got to check out what he has to say. But speaking of Randy Cross, man, how'd you feel about the 49ers season in general, man?
I enjoyed it. It's kind of one of the real plus side of, not doing NFL broadcasting for the last several years is, I can kind of be a fan instead of, I don't have to necessarily be impartial. And I can follow the Niners and I can watch the games and, I love watching Trent Williams. I love watching that offense in general and watch that defense eat. I think there's nowhere to go but really for them but up because there's still a game or a win or two short of what they want to do and where they want to be. So that's kind of where I'm at with them.
Man, what's really been going on is, we have nowhere to go but up because we have two rookie quarterbacks on these rookie contracts. So, you have Trey on a rookie deal. You have Brock Purdy, but then you just signed Sam Darnold. That one caught me by surprise on this situation.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see anything but positive with that. And they're going to sign another guy. Because for training camp, you got to have at least 4. And I mean 4 functional quarterbacks. Because, how much is Brock going to be able to do when they actually start practice? How much, is Trey going to have to do? How much of a load do you want to put on him in that, what he's got going on in his foot and his ankle and everything else? So my guess is Darnold takes a lot of reps, especially in the preseason. And that's what he's kind of there for. He's a just in case. He's a backup to the backup, and it's hard to say a guy making $5 or $6 million that potentially could be 10 or 11 is a cheap option, but in today's NFL, that is a cheap option, especially at quarterback. So I think it's a positive. I think it really is, and there's no telling. I mean, he hasn't been around this much talent since he left SC. So I'd be curious to see how he does surrounded by the people that this offense has in it.
Yeah, he's been on 2 different teams with not much talent, so maybe there's a good change of scenery there. But we're just looking at him as an insurance policy, kind of like how we had with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you don't know the one thing you knew about Jimmy G. And that's it. For some reason, something that just the way he plays, the way he was brought up in the game. I mean, he just wins. He gets it. And he's one of those guys that the blood pressure tends to go down in the tight spots towards the end of the game. And it's proven in his record. So you don't know that about Darnold. Heck, you don't know that about, Purdy or Trey either. But it'll be interesting to see how the young guys kind of settle out. Because it's not going to be any kind of a actual competition until, probably the middle of August or so.
Yeah,
If if they get the surgery in and he starts the rehab process as soon as possible.
yeah, it'll be pretty interesting when it comes down to training camp and preseason because we'll know who the guy can be. But the pressure's on Trey Lance this offseason.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, even compared to Brock at this point, he's almost more inexperienced than Brock is. At least Brock had some consecutive starts, but he was very inexperienced coming out of college, and he still remains kind of inexperienced. And the one thing that I would imagine when you get into the camps and you get into the off season, then you start getting into the training camp. I want to see how he runs to pass. I know he can run. I know he can hurt people with his feet. But what really made Brock Purdy special last year towards the end of the year wasn't the fact that he could move. It's that he could move and he could do something with the ball while he was moving. And I think that's one thing. If Trey adds something to his game in answer to what Brock Purdy has done, I would hope that's what he adds.
Yeah, that's all we're hoping for. I mean, yeah, he played through 4 career games. He's on to his 3rd year. He's coming into college with inexperience like he did. He only had 1 full season. That's been the question mark with Trey Lance. But
yeah, since high school.
yeah, pretty much. It's been that way, but he will only get better with experience if we think of it that way. I mean, sure,
Yeah.
the injury was unfortunate.
Well, it's a good thing too. Is sort of the competition will take care of itself, in all forms. Because if Brock's healthy and Trey's healthy, and they go toe to toe, one of them's going to be the backup, and I don't think that's going to be a bad situation at all. And I think the offense will be a winner for it. And the guy that doesn't win the deal, this isn't college. They're on rookie contracts, so that's an ideal situation for organizations, especially when you're looking for cap money and don't have to spend it on your quarterbacks. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's not like the bad situation with quarterbacks, but it's not like either one's going to have a lose-lose situation. It's a win-win because they got the best supporting cast. They got everybody around them to succeed. So I think the quarterback position should be more like if you get the job done, as long as you manage the game, I think as long as this defense holds up in the running game, I think whoever is at quarterback is going to do a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same parameters. Your job is to not be a manager, because I think that's a little almost belittling to most guys that have any kind of ability, that your job is to manage it. Your job is to not give it to the other guy. That's, in no particular order as a quarterback, your job is to win, your job is to score, and your job is to hold on to the damn ball and not give it to the other guy. You cover all 3 of those, you're going to be successful.
So, yeah, pretty much. But what's your takes on Jake Brendel being the starting center? They just gave him like a 4-year deal, max about $20 million. What's your thoughts of him?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for him. Good to see a good Bruin get a little reward. I think he's played really well. You look at he and Banks have been, sort of the other guys when you look at that offensive line, and that's no fault of their own. I mean, McGlinchey's gone now, and whether it's McKivitz or whoever takes over at right tackle, you're looking at Trent and the other 4 is how that line will be looked at until they sort of make people notice them. Because the only guy that people watch that offensive line for, I mean, this is no news flash to anybody there, but you put on a Niner tape, you're looking at Trent to start with, just to see, good God, who's this guy going to embarrass this week? And that's the mission for the other guys on the line, starting with Jake. He's got his deal. He's got to be happy. So, I mean, they brought in, I saw free agency wise, they brought in Feliciano from New York, and that'll be, Who knows? If he was, I've got to think if he was really, really good, he'd be playing in New York, but a lot. He'd still be there. But, it's systems and coaches make a gigantic difference. And if you've got position coaches that can coach guys up, that sort of leads into what you can do. John Lynch has been very, very good with that salary cap. He's got a calculator that tends to add up different than a lot of other teams, and he gets a lot out of the numbers. But you got to be able to draft between, coincidentally, from where the Niners are, somewhere in that high 90 to 100 and below, into the 200 and somethings and whatever. You've got to be able to draft in that area and do it and hitting on those guys. And with their needs, their needs are going to be able to fill in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the only time we've hit big on offensive lineman was Aaron Banks, which was a second round. Usually we go late rounds. They're very high on McKivitz. That's probably what makes me so confident about it, because McGlinchey priced himself out, and I'm intrigued by McKivitz,
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy, a veteran that's going to get a huge deal. You got to shake his hand and pat him on the back and thank him for his hard work and thanks for fighting through injuries and, good luck and cash a great check. What else can you say? The guy was a really good teammate, but, he's going to take a chance to make some cash, and it's cash that he wouldn't make with San Francisco. So, go for it. And you bring in the next guy, but that in today's world, even now that we're looking at $225, $230 million plus salary caps, you're still spending somewhere around 20% at least on one position. A lot of teams are spending it on their quarterbacks. Most teams these days, especially if you got one, you're spending that kind of money. That's a lot of damn money.
Absolutely.
To spend on one position. And you better be really good at the draft process, really good at the rookie free agent process, and consistently hit on picks and free agents in those first 4 years, so you can keep churning the lower level of your roster like that before some of those guys kind of matriculate up into the, 8-figure type contracts.
Yeah, like you said, majority of these contracts are either taken by quarterbacks, and we have a window with the opportunity. We have a couple more years until we eventually have to pay one of our quarterbacks, so there's a good chance for us to build a talent around them and try to see where we go. We still have a window for the Super Bowl. We just have to maintain that core players and stay healthy. That's it.
Yeah, that's the core players. I believe is something that coaches will look to. I think you got to be really happy with the staff in San Francisco and their ability to coach players up within what they want to do. And I think that's one of their strong suits. The one thing that's out of your control is how the season ended. And that's getting those injuries. And you had some, you look at the season, they dodged a lot of, I don't know about howitzers, but they dodged a lot of big bullets and injuries and got through some pretty crazy situations from an injury standpoint. So that's going to be, I always think with a team this talented, that is number one, might be number two, and in some months might be number three is injuries, health, and staying healthy.
Yeah, we've just been unfortunately lucky with those injuries. Some teams have suffered through quarterback injuries, and usually their season's over. But when you go on to your backup, you may have some luck there. But going on to your third string quarterback, that's got to be some miracle right there.
Well, look at the seasons, before some of these years, and that not necessarily obviously the year, you get to the Super Bowl to face the Chiefs, but look at some of the other years and when it's gotten sideways. When it's gotten sideways season-wise and the record's gotten down closer to 500, it's usually because you're having issues with injuries. And when it hits like that and you have one of those kind of years, it's not like it's just quarterbacks. It's O-line, it's wide receivers, it's linebackers, it's D-line, it's crazy. And you don't know. There's nothing that says when it's going to happen. The strength and conditioning coaches can't tell you when it's going to happen. Because if they knew that, you never had it never happened.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, it happens with a lot. Here's a good comment from one of the followers. Hey, you should be on the Hall of Fame, man. You know your stuff, and you're definitely one of those guys from CBS that everybody talks about, man.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's yeah. I worry about things that are in my control. You know, and back when I was playing, that was in my control. Back when I was doing NFL games and talking about it, that was in my control. Anything else is kind of
I
it's
mean,
other people's opinions and whatever that comes down to. So I don't get too worried about it.
yeah, you just enjoy what you do. I mean, it's just that you and Roger Craig have been snubs for quite a long time. I think you guys were a huge part of that Niners dynasty.
Yeah, I'm a big Roger guy. I think you ask a lot of guys wearing those gold jackets about Roger. Especially I think I heard a comment the other day from Mike Singletary about making and gave Roger a fantastic compliment, which I think is absolutely 100% on the money. Is Singletary talked about him being right there with Walter Payton, and
Oh, yeah.
during that era, yeah, I mean they were the backs. They ran with it, they caught it, they ran after the catch, they blocked, they did everything.
Oh, yeah. Like he was a more of a complete back. In those days, not much running backs were receiving backs like Roger. Roger kind
Yeah,
of like,
he was kind of the original. And people
yep.
forget he came out of Nebraska. He was like Tom Rathman. He was a fullback coming out of Nebraska that had run some with the ball, had not caught very many passes, but had spent most of his time blocking. He blocked for Mike Rozier at Nebraska. So, and heck, when he got to San Francisco, he was a fullback, kind of a co-halfback at times, because Bill used both positions as the same thing. But he and Wendell Tyler when he first started.
I mean, Roger kind of paved the way for a lot of backs like Marshall Faulk, and you can go on with a lot of those other guys. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, for example, is kind of in that trend of what you look at Roger Craig in a way, like in those days, catching the ball off the backfield, running the ball effectively well.
Yeah, being used very similar, very, very similar. And that was, that started with him when he was at fullback, and the position changed, but the use didn't. And the best thing about him being a halfback was kind of his feel and the way, people hated trying to tackle him. And being a guard that was out pulling on sweeps and traps and inside, bims and counters and things like that, they knew if they made one mistake, A, I was going to hit them, and B, if I got good wood on them, they had no shot at getting Roger.
Rogers was like,
Especially with those high knees.
yeah, he had those high knees. They call him, what is it, catfish or something?
Yeah.
I mean,
he was very good natured. He had kind of a curly mustache.
He was a nice guy.
When he was a rookie. That's where the catfish thing came from.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. In 2016, I met him up like at an event. One of those most humblest persons you'll ever meet, and
Whew.
still got one of his big autograph signings. It's still on one of my other walls. But
yeah.
There was another guy that doesn't get talked about much, but I think he should have a statue. I mean, Dan Buns kind of revolutionized the play, the stop. I don't get why he doesn't get the museum recognition. I mean, don't you think or no?
Yeah. It was, San Francisco is a very storied franchise. That would be in the top 5 plays. There's a couple catches. There's a couple runs, and there's a couple tackles, and he's got one of the tackles. That tackle, especially considering who he hit, where he hit him, and how he hit him. I mean, Johnson was a big old dude. I mean, that's a 280-pound back out of Ohio State that he hit, and he just boned him and dead stopped him in his tracks. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's something that, if it hasn't been, should be memorialized in some regard. But yeah, Bunzo he did an unbelievable job. Great guy too.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Having him on my show like months ago, that guy had good stories. He told me about how that play started and how it played out to be. But he took that background into playing rugby, so he did all that kind of stuff from there.
Yeah, rugby is a very underappreciated sport. I played it in college, and you know, I think it was, well, it's unbelievable for your conditioning. They throw a hell of a party. I give them that. And you know, from a football tackling standpoint, there's nothing better than learning how to tackle in rugby. Learning how to tackle without pads makes tackling with pads a lot easier when you do it right. And Pete Carroll sort of got the credit, I think, NFL wise, several years back when he started really teaching his guys on that Seattle defense, that whole rugby tackling idea.
I mean, there was a lot of backgrounds with certain players, but Dan Buns told me he did like I think he did like a different lead for that before, and then he kind of still did football in both ways. So it was kind of more he was accustomed to it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very helpful knowing how to do it the right way because you can't tackle in rugby like you do in football.
Absolutely.
Your face and neck won't hold up.
Yeah, that's what I kind of like. That's what I'm starting to appreciate about when you see players have rugby background, they got to have that physicality in a bit, because they had to go with no pads on, but going with pads makes them even more dangerous when they use that into their advantage.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Oh, let's talk about your boy John Taylor. Let's bring him up.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, he's one of those, and you see this to this day. The guys that when they start in the league and they really get people's attention, it happens because of being a returner, and that was John's original role with the Niners when Bill Walsh first got him out of, I think it was Delaware State. He was a return guy. And this offense that Bill was he was running, that's when it was Dwight and Freddie. And then, you know, when JT and Jerry got there, Freddie always took the short ones and could turn them into long ones. Dwight was more of a possession guy. And then when JT got there, he started being able to have that, being that receiver, you know, whether it's Tyreek Hill now or Debo or those kind of guys, everybody now has got that guy. John was that guy in this offense that would take a 6-yard pass, 8-yard pass, and you could be on the 30-yard line. And if you miss that first tackle, that 8-yard pass is going to turn into an 80-yard pass or a 70-yard pass. That's the kind of threat he was. And I think playing with JT actually made Jerry Rice, it's kind of hard to imagine him improving because he was so good. But I think it brought out the best in Jerry's abilities to run after the catch, seeing what JT could do. I mean, and Jerry was never one to, you know, he's highly hyper competitive. So I think seeing somebody else do something like that, you know, Jerry's got a lot of oh yeah in him. So I think when John did a lot of his stuff, Jerry was like, okay, I can do that.
Jerry just seems like that, like in a different way. Like, he'll take credit for whatever he does, but he takes pride in the route running and all a bunch of stuff. And I guess in different spotlights, he would be in, like, if there was a different type of perspective sport, he would be kind of like the Ric Flair of professional football. He's the greatest. Not even the question.
Yeah. I mean, it's only gets into question, and you know, I think some sports writers and even athletes that do things sort of lose sight of being that great for that long. You know, every year there's somebody that's been in the league for 5-6 years, and you know, he's got the most consecutive seasons of 1,000 yards or the most consecutive 100-yard catches. Just look at the stats and take a deep breath. and see what Jerry did and the number of touchdowns and everything else. And it's a testament to how great Jerry is. and how great Jerry was. I mean, he still looks like he can do it. He still looks like he can still play.
Yeah,
And
even in pre-games, he'll catch the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to how great he was, that how far away from his records a lot of great players still are. I mean, when I was playing, before Jerry started setting all the records, because I mean, we played together, 85, 86, so 4 years. When then he really got on a rip after that, besides being an MVP in my last game, Super Bowl 23. Steve Largent had the NFL record for most touchdowns in a career. Steve Largent had 99 touchdowns, and that was a big deal. I mean, that was a big deal that he had 99 touchdowns. And Jerry went by that like it was standing still. I mean, he obviously did. He more than doubled it up. But it's fun to see every football season. People get out over their skis about how good some current players are, and it's fun to see every year. Sort of get slapped back into reality sometimes when they're faced with the the real facts of, Jerry's got that product, Goat Fuel. It's called Goat for a reason.
Yeah, because he's the ultimate GOAT for the position. But man, he still lives the life, man. I think in today's football,
he and Jim Brown, I think he and Jim Brown are the best football players ever. And you can throw in a LT or Reggie or somebody else, but I just think dominant from a dominant standpoint, he and Jim Brown, there's just nobody touches them.
They were just their own dominant position. I mean, Jim Brown was one of the best running backs during his era and still is, if you want to put in that debate. But I mean, he did it all in the tougher era. Like in the 60s, that's when football was really, really tough. And he withstand playing those type of injuries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he walked away, which sometimes pisses people off.
A lot of desire left. They could have had something left to play, but, they did it for their health purposes. Some of them keep going, and they have injuries that kind of hold on for the longest,
Well, Jim Brown walked away to Hollywood.
That was his backup plan.
Off the field onto the silver screen.
Yeah, it's smart on his part. He still had a longer career after that. So, is there any good memories of Bubba Paris?
Yeah, I mean, Bubba, another great teammate, fantastic guy. Prodigious eater. He could go, as they say. I remember we had a strength and conditioning coach that was going to do dietary profiles, and his name was Al Vermeil. It's Dick Vermeil's younger brother.
Oh.
And they gave us these forms we had to take home, and we had to fill them out and write, what we had. And it was like a whole week. You had to chart it for a week, and that would sort of say, okay, here's my basic diet. And Bubba did it. I guess he was pretty honest. And he tilted the machine as far as, how many calories and what it was and everything else. But Bubba was a trailblazer. He was and there were guys like Bubba, Big Daddy Lipscomb, Roger Brown. Who else? Not many, but I mean the great big oversized guys. And for Bubba to weigh in, I think Bob McKittrick would give Bubba like 305 or 310. He had to be in because Bill didn't want anybody over 300. But Bubba would he'd have to try to lose weight all week long just to get down to that number, and then eat like a condemned man for 2 days to get all his strength back for the games. But he's a proud Michigan man, very, very smart, extremely religious. Had some wild encounters with some less than very religious defensive guys that used to give him some unique answers every time he'd witness to them. But William is a great person, was a fantastic player.
Yeah, I mean, he was like a little more overweight than most positions during the early years. I mean, like in those days, you can play like at the less than 300 pounds and still be a good solid offensive lineman. But in today's NFL, some of them are barely over 300 pounds or a little bit more in that requirement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest difference, and I saw this happening when my son was, I want to say, because my son was a senior in high school, like '09. So let's say in about '07, '08. Um, that was early advent of the strength and conditioning coaches. And I'm not talking about the ones at the schools and high schools. I'm talking about the independent ones where parents would pay to have these guys train their kids. And they're doing Olympic lifts. They're doing all those, almost combine specific type exercises, very football specific exercises. And it's for total body strength. And that's been the hugest, that's the biggest difference in eras happening since the early 2000s has been guys coming out of high school and college and into the pros that by the time they're 23 and they're in the NFL, they've been lifting and training for 10 years. And we didn't do any of that. There were some guys that did. It was pretty unusual, guys that lifted a lot. But, I mean, my son was a quarterback. And I can tell you, he got probably about his sophomore year at Wake Forest. He was talking about his strength and conditioning numbers and what he was squatting and what he was, doing in this exercise and that and the cleans and whatnot. And I just started laughing because, I mean, he was about as strong as I was my second, third year in the NFL as a lineman, and he was a quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, you look at that. That's where the thing happens with these linemen. I'm not sure if skeletal facts would tell you they're just flat, bigger and stronger and thicker bones and bigger. I don't think that's true. I just think guys are training harder and longer and they're building better bodies.
Maybe that does play a factor because they add more into their weight and they make sure that they still have the same speed and then they just add more strength to it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of training. That's what it takes. Like a lot of them do a lot of lifting. They do a lot of different trains, how to improve their game. I guess over the years they found some better dieting or something or some protein stuff that kind of helps them up a
Yeah.
little bit more. And it
Yeah.
kind of
Dietary stuff makes a big difference. Supplements make a big difference. Better sports through science makes a big difference.
I mean, there's a lot of big linemen in today's NFL that are pretty big, but there's this one prospect that's pretty big from Ohio State, man. Like, what is he? 6'8", almost 400 pounds, but runs pretty solidly fast for his size.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one,
There was a guy, I want to say he would have been sometime around 90-ish. His name is Aaron Gibson. He was an offensive tackle. He came out of Michigan State, and he was with the Packers and I think the Lions and maybe somebody else. And they came into training camp one year, and I went to Detroit for a camp thing, and this reporter asked him, said, "What are your thoughts on being the first 400-pound plus offensive lineman in the NFL?" And he kind of put up his hand like, he goes, "Excuse me, I'm the first one to admit it. There have been a lot before me."
like a lot
But
of them.
there are plenty of guys that are getting that big now.
I mean, you got a lot of offensive linemen. You got guys like Orlando Brown, who's like a 350 or something pound lineman for he plays for the Bengals now. But
Yeah.
a lot of guys. We even had Trent Brown, who was almost like in between, like I guess 360 or a little bit more than that.
Yeah, it's not unusual. But
Yeah, I mean, most of them are good as pass
gonna,
blockers.
yeah, they're just going to keep getting bigger. The difference is as guys have gotten bigger, and it kind of passes in phases. But look at Trent Williams. Look at him come off the ball. Watch some of the stuff he does, just mowing people down. That's highly unusual. I think he's an incredible example for young linemen out there. You want somebody to watch him. Watch his techniques. you can emulate the things he does, you can learn to be a pretty damn good lineman.
Yeah, Spencer Burford, before he even got drafted, he told me that he watched a lot of Trent Williams' game, and that's what got him to model his game after.
Well, it's a good place to start. Ain't the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's a good place to start.
Well, I mean, he's currently listed at the starting guard, but he kind of picked up his game. But he was a tackle coming out of college. But I guess a lot of players have always modeled their game after him, and they like how he moves.
Well, plus, some offenses, the difference between guard and tackle is not that dramatic. Guard and tackle in some instances, in some offenses, is pretty close to the same position. The difference is you don't have the bumpers at tackle. At guard, you've got the foul lanes on either side of you to kind of keep people in line. You can get some help. Out on Fantasy Island on the outsides, you don't get as much help.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just a lot of ways that these positions are. I mean, a lot of it, it can translate for some tackles. I mean, some tackles can move the guard because of their body strength, and they can move quicker than most other guards. And the versatility is always important. So if you can play that spot and they like you at that spot, then you should be good at there. I mean, like you were talking about John Feliciano, we signed him based by versatility because he can play center and guard.
Yes. Yeah, versatility is important, especially in today's world. You save a lot of money having a guy that can do both on your roster.
For sure, man. I mean, he's played all the spots except the right tackle spot, so that's kind of intriguing by John Feliciano.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's sooner, and heck, if you don't think so, you probably haven't been paying attention. I mean, look at most teams in this league and go through their game logs. How many times do they play 5 offensive linemen? These days, not that often. Somebody's dipping a shoulder, somebody's clipping a wing, somebody's doing a wrist, somebody's doing an ankle, something. And all of a sudden, your right guard has to go to right tackle, and your backup has to go into center because the center is going to be the right guard. And if you have those capabilities, it makes that rotation a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. Like if you can get those guys to fill in and all that stuff. So it just makes a huge difference, especially a guy you can count on. If something happens with the injuries, you can either plug them in.
Yeah, and that's true on the other side too. I mean, I'm really curious to see on this defense for San Francisco, what having a guy like Hargrave, because people know what it's like, but you don't have double-digit sack guys in the inside of defenses, especially inside of really good defenses, that often. Because inside guys are usually they're like the bird dogs of the defense. They flush the birds, they flush the pretty boys, and the defensive ends and outside edge rushers, they get them. But you get a guy inside, and Hargrave's got those stats that can go double digit. I mean, that's just going to have some of your guys on the outside, whether it's Bosa or Jackson or Farrell or whoever. They're going to love seeing those quarterbacks trying to escape that inside pressure.
I mean, it's kind of been a rare position to see that happen. I mean, the last time the Eagles had a player playing at that spot with double-digit sacks was so long time ago, so it's kind of an interesting position that he played. I mean, 11 sacks, that's a season high by Hargrave, so a lot of his double team is going to play a factor. It's going to make it easy for Bosa, Drake Jackson, or Colin Farrell, or maybe potentially if the reports are true that we might sign Austin Bryant, maybe he's in a visit, but maybe that will be an intriguing spot to check out.
Yeah, if that magic calculator kicks back in for John Lynch.
Yeah, and the good thing about this Niners front office and this team in general, man, they like to capitalize those draft compensations, man. It's just they find some ways to get those extra draft picks. Like we would have been having 4 draft picks, but you include those 4 compensatory picks that we got out of it, man. That just tells you how good this front office does, man.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. I've already said I'm a big fan of what they do. But I'm also a huge fan when it comes to the draft of just before you get to triple digits and up into the, around 200, that sweet spot, that 110, 120, I think that's where you get your real good value guys in the draft. That third and fourth round is where you can get, and the majority of the guys you're getting in those spots, some of the guys you're drafting at 99 were told they were first round picks, and they're pissed that
That
they're
they
not
slide.
first round picks, and they've got a chip on their shoulder. And God bless them. That's a formula you love to see. Guys that just get obsessed that they got disrespected and didn't get drafted high enough, and no one wants to, have the math explained to them too closely, because no one wants to hear the reality. If you're, they can say, I'm the fourth best defensive end in this draft. Well, to most guys, that means I'm going to be drafted somewhere in the first or second round. But that depends on other positions. That depends on how many cornerbacks are getting drafted. That depends on how many edge guys are getting drafted. It depends on how many quarterbacks are getting drafted. I mean, that's going to be the fun thing about this draft, especially when you get down out of the top 5 or 6. If people lose their minds and start drafting quarterbacks like they say they're gonna, there's going to be a lot of real high quality defensive players and other guys available that you're going to see some teams start making some moves trades wise to get at some of these guys.
Some of them are potential upsides. There's some guys that had some injury issues, and maybe that's why they slide a little further. They definitely had first-round talent. Then you have a guy, like you said, who should have been a first-round talent but was passed on and proved something. But then you have some of them who were unfinished products. Like, you've seen how it gone with the histories. You've seen with George Kittle. He was a blocking tight end from Iowa. Nobody didn't know what he was going to be. He was a guy that was mostly blocking under this offense. And who would have thought he would have been a successful tight end?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, same thing as a guy like Jusic. You go through the guys that have been, especially just go through the guys in this offense that have been in this offense skill wise. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, big deal in college. Deebo Samuel, big deal in college. Were they top 5 picks? Nope.
But they produce.
If you had to do it over again, people knew what they were passing on. They get drafted a whole hell of a lot higher
than they were.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very much it's the most important period in an organization's year, I think, is that free agency, the draft, and rookie free agency, and how that's going to all settle out. That's where you really build the quality in your roster. So it's going to be an interesting time. I think the Niners are in good shape because they've got a lot of solid talent on their roster. And if you're a rookie and you're getting brought into that organization, just good luck. You better come in guns blazing.
I mean, most of the guys we draft are either redshirt, so it's like they have a chance to learn a year and be able to benefit this. I mean, I think you're going to see some more of Danny Gray in the upcoming season because he took a year learning this offense and learn how to like be a better player coming into year 2. I think his blocking was pretty much why he didn't get much playing time.
Yeah. I saw him a little bit in college. He's we talked about John Taylor.
He's got that speed.
He's another guy that, besides being fast as hell, he knows what to do with it. He knows how to avoid getting hit, which is important. The way he can run with the ball. And every year there are guys that are like that coming out of college because of the whole 7-on-7 nature of so many of these offenses in general. They're spread. They're getting the ball to these guys that can go like that. And I mean, his forte was basically as a returner in college. That the guy could just go down the sideline and you throw him a bomb. But, there's plenty of guys in this league that you look at them and you said when they came in, they go, well, that guy's a great returner. I'm not sure what he could do on offense. Well, look around the league at the really impactful yards per catch guys, and a lot of those guys are those returner types.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they have those return traits because they did it in college. I mean, you look at a guy like Ray McCloud, he kind of has that return dynamic skills, and we used him this year a little bit more than expected. And he kind of has that skill that you can't coach. He just has that breakaway speed a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing. It sounds funny having a former fat guy talking about receivers, but it takes those guys a long time to adjust to kind of the geometry and the speed of the game. They're used to being the dominant speed, and if they can be fast with confidence, they can make an impact from the jump. But that's the hard part. I mean, it's hard to be that fast with confidence, when you're not quite sure how, if you're a little bit on the back of your mind, I'm going to get the crap knocked out of me. That tends to slow you down a little bit.
You got to play with confidence. You got to play with that you embrace the contact, because most of these receivers, if they're going to catch the ball, they know they're going to get hit.
Oh yeah. Well, especially to some degree today. And that really enables and emboldens a lot of receivers too, because they know they're not going to get hit. They know they're not going to get lit up. The chances of them getting really lit up are so much lesser than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Because they've legislated a lot of those blow-up plays out. Those ones that used to keep the little guys from going across the middle. Yeah, that's why you see more little guys across the middle. That's why guys like Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan love to scheme with their little guys.
They sure do.
Then you're getting the advantage inside with the bigger guys trying to catch, those guys that can move like spit on a griddle.
Yeah, a lot of the advantages because of a lot of those hits, man. They get penalized for those type of hits. They get like fines for those hits. I mean, it's kind of hard to.
The fines make a lot more of an impression than the penalties do. Penalties hurt. The fines really hurt.
Yeah, especially if it's costly on your team's defense. I mean, I get that the rules have changed over the years because of the lead. It's gone more about protecting players' health and protecting more of the quarterbacks. Receivers forget about running the middle back then, but now in today's NFL, they can run right up the middle and not even have to go through the consequences like that.
Yeah, but if it wasn't like that, look at the offenses. Look at the way Kansas City ran offense in that Super Bowl. Look at the things that Philly was able to do. Look at the things that San Francisco is able to do. Look at what Miami has added now with Tyreek and Tua and whatnot on that offense. That's all predicated on that. On part of that's on that. Predicated on that. The fact that it's a little more user friendly to use that space between the hash marks.
Absolutely, man. It's just the hash marks are different for them because, they have the ability to take advantage of what the defense is taking. They can even have one little separation and boom, they can take it to the house. You see a lot of Tyreek Hill does it. Jalen Waddle is another guy in Miami, but I guess him and Tyreek have like that speed, man. They're just really tough. I mean, if Tua can stay healthy and be consistent, I think Miami can be the scariest team next year, but it depends on Tua.
Yeah, he's got to be healthy. They've got really good talent. They've got one of those, great on paper teams. So, I'm going to reserve judgment on them because I think the Jets are obviously going to be a much better team. And the Patriots will still be a pretty damn good team. So I'm not exactly ceding the AFC East to Miami.
Yeah, it could still be Buffalo's because they still got the talent. I mean, I think
Josh isn't going anywhere.
He ain't going anywhere anytime soon. He's already paid, so he just gets to build a team around him. NFC West, I think it's more between the Niners and the Seahawks. I think as long as we keep our team around like we've been doing, I think we can still have a chance to run the division again.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Rams aren't the Ram. We've seen too many times over the last, go back as far as you want. Super Bowl champions that the next year just lay an egg and don't play well for whatever reason. It's usually had a little too much fun, didn't quite train the same way, didn't quite, you got a little caught up in the hype and the attention and everything else. I would look for them. You got guys like Aaron Donald still on that team. They're going to be a damn good team. I look at them as being more of a threat than Seattle because of kind of some of the guys around Aaron Donald and the way that they can play defense and what they can still do on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be extremely motivated this year. I mean, extremely. No one likes to get embarrassed like that, and they got embarrassed bad.
Yeah, finishing that season with what is it, like 6-11 or 5-12 or something? I mean, it's got to be frustrating for them to go through that. And maybe you're right because they were going through injuries, so that's another team to watch out for. But realistically, I don't know what to expect from the Cardinals. It's like they got a new head coach. Maybe there's hope of the culture with change of their defense. Got they have something, but we don't know.
Yeah, it'd be dangerous. They got. They've got a quarterback, whether you like him or not. He's no fun to play against, and he's no fun to game plan for. So, and he's got some pretty good toys on the outside. They're going to be okay. I just think for some reason, something about the Rams. And I know they lost, and we saw one of your comments there talking about they lost all their starters. They didn't lose all their starters on defense.
I mean, they still got one.
There's one real important one where it's 99 in the middle.
Yeah.
And, the cap's not friendly. When you win a Super Bowl and some of your contracts hit the right way, that next year after, you got to let people go. Look at what happened to Seattle. When they suddenly decided when they won their Super Bowl and they were going to pay some of their defensive guys, they lost their offensive line. They lost, receivers. They lost a lot of talent. But that's a choice you got to make. And that's what makes that time of the year when it's draft and free agent evaluation and your coaching staff, that's what makes that so valuable, is the ability to take advantage of those times of the year and those people.
Yeah, they lose them based by the contracts, and maybe that's what's going to happen with the Rams is the cap space is not looking good for them. They're trying to clear up as much as they can, get rid of certain players they don't need. I guess trading Ramsey was kind of a business decision. Cutting Leonard Floyd was based by cap space reasons, I'm assuming. I mean, it's going to be a lot of changes, but they took all that risk just to win a Super Bowl. So sometimes it takes a lot of costs to get where you want to go.
Yeah. Would you trade? Probably not.
Yeah, you look at the Denver Broncos. What have they done since? They haven't done anything since winning a Super Bowl, but they did risk it all cost.
Yeah. The whole Peyton experiment, that paid off and cost them.
But in all perspective, man, I know this has been going on for a little longer, bro. I know you probably got some stuff to do. Definitely appreciate your time, Randy.
No problem at all.
Anytime, maybe down the road. But hey, I'm just wondering, man, can I get an autograph? Not just play.
Sure.
All right, man.
Send me the address.
All right, for sure, man. But hey, I definitely appreciate your time, man. So for anybody else, man, go follow Randy Cross and go check out some of the CBS. You still do CBS Sports, right?
Yeah, CBS. I'm on the college side now.
Okay, man. I definitely check it out every now and then, man. But thank you for your time, Randy. Looking forward to the upcoming schedules, but
All
I'll
right.
keep you posted, man.
Always nice to talk Niners with Niner fans. Appreciate it, man. Talk to you.
Appreciate it, man.